Hello, hello. I'm Danita Jones. My family calls me Civic Minded Jones. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Shanté Holley. She is a trauma informed mental health coach with over 20 years of experience. She's a respected voice in a mental wellness community, known for her accessible approach to mental health. Dr. Holley is also a prolific podcaster with three successful shows focused on personal growth, healing, and navigating life's challenges. Additionally, she was a Fulbright Scholarship finalist for her research on Blacksit, the interconnectedness of racial trauma, healing, and Black immigration to Portugal. Shoot, I would love to talk about that at another time, but right now, let's welcome Dr. Shanté Holley.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for being here. I've been following you on Instagram and I've been loving all the different segments that you talk about regarding mental health. Why is mental health important to you? Why do you do this work?
I do this work because as an educator and as a coach, my life's work is about helping people move through to these benchmarks and these milestones. And what I was finding in my work was that people would have all of these lofty goals and ambitions, but really struggling to put the pieces together. And sometimes you think, is it the curriculum? Is it the strategy? Do we need to add another log to the fire? But what I came to find was that it really wasn't the strategy at all. It was what was happening between the ears. That's where the real barriers and the obstacles were. And once we really started to kind of drill down and get into that piece of it, that's where we really started to make some inroads and people were able to remove those barriers and achieve their personal and professional goals. And so it is essential to all that we do and aspire to do.
That's great. That's great. And I invited you here to, because of my show, From Discord to Harmony, Charting America's Path to Unity. And I feel personally that it's been everything that's been going on right now in the country has been a mental drain. And so I wanted to explore things regarding that, the anxiety and depression that we're feeling regarding constant changes and so forth. So, with your extensive experience in mental wellness, how have you seen anxiety manifest differently in people over the past few years, especially considering the social and political challenges we are facing?
So one of the biggest amplifiers of anxiety is the proliferation of social media, right? We are always on our phones. For better or for worse, we're always on our phones. And people have started to express their anxieties and kind of, some people call it trauma dumping, but have been able to kind of really um, push out these narratives about their feelings and about their worries and about their frustrations and about their anger. And when you are in this constant environment of these emotional exchanges, it really forces you to think about your own feelings and your own frustrations and your own anxieties. And you are weighing in on that and you're seeing a lot of problems, but you're not seeing a lot of solutions. And so that becomes exacerbated. And then democracy, the promise of democracy is that it's the will of the people, right? But when you have one group of people who feel very strongly one way and another group of people who feel the polar opposite, and the stakes are so high on each side, when your side doesn't win, and you feel a sense of helplessness, you feel powerless, you start to question the system, and you become angry and apathetic. And do you want to continue to participate? And when you don't have any healthy outlets to process that, because I will tell you, social media is not the healthiest place to process your feelings. It's just not. It's not the safest place to process your feelings. So when you don't have healthy outlets for that, it really tends to amplify and exacerbate the frustration, the anxiety, triggers for depression, and all of that.
Yeah. So before I even move to the next question, because you mentioned healthy outlets, what could be or what are healthy outlets?
So let me start from kind of like the lowest hanging fruit to like a little bit higher, right? Because it's easy to say therapy, coaching, but that's not always accessible and it's not always affordable. Okay. So there is so much good literature. I'm happy to leave. Actually, I'm going to do that. A list of recommended reads for people who would like to process that. So books are like the lowest hanging fruit. And even for people that are like, I don't like to read, audiobooks are fair game. Podcasts, there are some really helpful podcasts that are fair game. There are some really helpful YouTube channels. And so people are creating content that isn't necessarily social, but it's definitely helpful. It's instructive. It provides names and categorizations to understand the feelings that you're having, and it asks and raises some really great questions for introspection and self-reflection, like how am I responding and how am I showing up and how is this changing me and do I like what I'm becoming and what agency do I have to pivot and go into different directions. So books are healthy outlets, podcasts, um, and some content is healthy outlets. One of the biggest is community. So lots of studies have shown, and you can look at the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, who is a traumatologist, and he has even said that therapy and coaching are not even the best remedies for healing from trauma. It's actually community. It's having places where you feel safe, to express, where you're going to be taken care of, where you're going to be heard and seen and validated, and where you don't feel so alone and isolated. And even the work of Dr. Vivek Murthy, his book Together supports that. So a lot of us are in these places, especially when there's a political divide, of kind of like this relational hunger, where we don't feel like we have healthy human connections, and healthy social connections. But that's actually one of the best ways for us to heal and navigate and move through together.
Okay, great. I love all those resources you dropped there. Um, so, how does the current cultural and political climate contribute to anxiety? And what are some of the common ways people are experiencing it during these times?
So anxiety craves and demands certainty, stability, and safety. And politics are the complete opposite of that.
Yes,
Okay.
it
There
is.
is no certainty. There are no guarantees. There is like it's fluctuating and it's volatile, right? And so because it's unpredictable and you don't know what's going to happen next, or what's going to come out, and so that exacerbates the anxiety. It's the unpredictability of politics. Then the current administration has famously, if you look at some of the rhetoric from Steve Bannon, has famously and intentionally said that this go around is going to be shock and awe. And so you notice in the first few days of the administration, it was executive order, executive order, executive order. And there was such an onslaught of information coming
Yeah.
all at once that your brain couldn't even really process and absorb one change before a new change was coming. And the strategy for that is that when people become overwhelmed, they also become paralyzed. They're just like, I'm out. I
Hence
can't. I
apathy.
can't. Apathy, right? And being apathetic in a democracy is one of the worst things that you can be, because your engagement and your involvement and your ability to pay attention, and act is what is required for change and growth and resistance, if that's the path that you're going. And so to be bombarded with, I've also seen a sense of overwhelm. And then people have something that's called like participatory anxiety. So it's like, it's already been so much that I'm just even nervous about what's next, right? And so as a result, a lot of people, I've seen so many people that say, I have not watched cable news since the election. Like I'm watching cooking shows, I'm watching HGTV, I'm in the garden and what have you. And to a degree, that's actually healthy, because when any time you find yourself in a triggering environment, you want to try to manage the trigger. At the same time, you don't want to be so cut off from information, that you don't understand what's happening and how it impacts you. And so a lot of people have been struggling to find the balance between being informed and being at peace.
Yeah, and I've been working on that myself, making sure I have a, a healthy balance. Even as active as I am, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna binge 911 right now. I'd rather deal with that trauma, what they're doing within a fictional state instead of, dealing with real life at the moment.
Right.
So you've done significant work exploring trauma recovery. How can racial and cultural trauma influence anxiety and depression? How can individuals start to heal from it?
So there is something called racial battle fatigue. And racial battle fatigue is the exhaustion and very real debilitation and demoralization that comes from having to what Black people call hold up the bloodstained banner, right? And so when you think about some of the most prolific voices of change that have moved the needle, right? Or moved towards a more perfect union, a lot of those voices have been voices of color, have been Black Americans, Latino Americans, Indigenous peoples. And the thing is that people start asking and raising the question, why does it always have to be us? Why does it
Right.
always have to be us? Um, right now there's a lot of coalescing around the 92%, which refers to the 92% of Black American women voters who voted for the Democratic presidential candidate. And it's a very real kind of like sobering reality that when you can have 92% of agreement, which for the record is unheard of. Like I work in academia, I have worked in corporate America. You can't even get 92% of people to agree on still or sparkling water. Like it's just unheard of. So to get 92% of people in lockstep. And then 78% of Black men, so in total, 85% of the Black population in lockstep, and then for it still not to be enough.
Mhm.
It creates this sense of, you know what? And so what a lot of the 92% and the 78% are doing are taking a step back and saying, y'all got it.
Mhm.
You we showed up, we did our part. So, and this clearly is not our fight because we're on board.
Mhm.
And what that has done actually is it has forced a lot of other racial groups who have historically hid behind the skirts of women and hid behind the coattails of men who are out there on those front lines. And it's like, no, you go right on. Because the change is not going to come from any one group. And people are finally starting to wake up and realize that they're going to have to step up, that they're going to have to do something. And so, from a racial perspective, a lot of Black Americans are taking some much needed rest, paying attention, engaged. But even right now, you can cut on social media and see a lot of Black people line dancing. Where them fans at?
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, the world is burning down and y'all out there with fans.
It was
And
like
it's
we did
like,
our job.
we did our job, so get somebody else to do it, because the continual dependence and reliance on uncompensated Black labor, which is how this country was built, Black people are finally like,
Hmm.
we're taking some much needed rest. And you can see even some frustration with that because people are like, well, why isn't Kamala out there? It's like Kamala Harris is a private citizen.
Right. She's a
Kamala
private citizen
Harris,
now. She can just, do her
she has
life.
campaigned.
Hmm.
She told you everything that would happen. And the thing is, and even a lot of white women who would say, I understand the assignment. A lot of them understood the assignment to be, I'm going to go and vote for Kamala, when really what the assignment was going and talking to your relatives and
Hmm.
your friends and neighbors and experiencing the discomfort and the potential ostracization and speaking to issues of equity and equality. But because there was an unwillingness to be uncomfortable, because people still wanted to, cast their votes and come to Christmas dinner, We had a very different outcome. And so all of that has contributed to like the racial elements layered on top of this current political discourse.
Yeah, no, so true. And I too, after the election, took my break. I'm like, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to rest. It was time. Um, so for someone struggling with both anxiety and depression, how can they tell the difference? And when should they consider reaching out for professional help?
So anxiety manifests in a lot of ways, but it tends to be characterized by like excessive worry, racing thoughts, um, and a somatic disruption. So we don't just feel things in between our ears, we also feel them in our body. So like when people are nervous and anxious, your stomach is hurting and your chest is tight and your headaches and that sort of thing, and physical tension. Whereas depression tends to be this kind of like disconnected, apathetic, sense of like hopelessness and overwhelm. And for anybody that is struggling with that, when you're struggling with anxiety, when you can't ground yourself, when you can't say, okay, let me stay in this moment, am I safe right now? Am I protected right now? Am I, when you can't ground yourself and come back to the moment, okay, like the power and the presence of now, that's a sign that you need to seek some help. And then depression can be so debilitating, like it feels, um, Solange Knowles has this song called Cranes in the Sky. And she talks about like, these metal clouds and it just feels so heavy. Um, when you get to the point where you cannot function through life, where the refrigerator is perpetually empty, where you are maxing out your sick days at work, when you are disengaging, like, hey, you want to do lunch? Or hey, girl, you want to come out? And you're like, no, when text messages are going unanswered, in other words, you're checking out of life, that is also a sign that you need some professional support and help. And there's absolutely no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame in that because, as I said, trying to wrestle with these issues in isolation is deadly. And I'm not saying that to be like overly alarmist. I earlier referenced Dr. Vivek Murthy's work, and he talked about how loneliness, the epidemic of loneliness, can be so physically detrimental that it is tantamount to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So isolation is a major red flag. And if you are dealing with any of these issues on your own, and lacking the ability to kind of like regulate or re-engage in life, that's a sign where you need to seek some professional help.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. 'Cause, yeah, I know I suffer from anxiety, and I noticed too, like really, and I've spoken about this with other experts, being present, really making sure, just grounding myself and being present, helps me tremendously. So what are well, I think you already kind of covered this, but we just go over again too. Like, what are some physical and emotional symptoms of anxiety and depression that might not always no, that we may not always recognize, especially in our day-to-day lives?
So one of the ways that depression manifests that people don't always realize is anger, believe
Hmm.
it or not. People that seem like they always have like a chip on their shoulder, got an attitude, or they're not really accessible. So in the salad of emotions, right? Fear, anxiety, anger, all the anger is actually like the lowest hanging fruit because your brain is it's very efficient, right? And so anger is easy. It's easy to get people riled up, and that sort of thing. But a lot of experts call anger a secondary emotion. They're like, anger is really a smokescreen for something else that's going on. And sometimes that anger is a smokescreen for fear. So, for example, if you think about, say you have a friend who has been like sick and you want them to go to the hospital and they keep kind of like blowing it off, that can come out as anger. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why won't you go to are you stupid? Like, it's like, whoa. But
Hold
what
up
that's, but
there.
what that's really about is, I'm afraid for you. I'm afraid of losing you. Something serious is going on and I'm worried. And some people don't have the language and the vocabulary or the level of vulnerability to be able to express that. So it comes out as anger. And so if you are mad all the time, explore that, see what that's really about. In terms of anxiety, um, so appetite, so some people are the bucket of ice cream, give me the bag of chips and the cinnamon rolls. And some people is like, when's the last time you ate? And you're like,
Don't remember.
remember.
Yeah.
That is also, a sign. And then also like muscle tension, right? So some people are just like always kind of like what's going on here, and it's like, did I do something at the gym? Did I sprain a muscle? A lot of tension, rest right here. And so if you are carrying a lot of that, even just painfully in between the shoulder blades and what have you, that's also an indication that something else internally might be going on.
Mhm. Okay, good points or things to pay attention to. I mean, I
For
love,
sure.
mentioning anger because you never really think about that is could be one way that it shows up in your life.
Yeah.
So, how does societal pressure to maintain a sense of productivity or perfection impact mental health? And what are some ways people can push back against those pressures to protect their well-being?
So the entirety of our American system of commerce is built on productivity.
Mhm.
And this is embedded from a very early age. It is when people are like asking second graders, so what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right, yeah. Yep.
Um, that's not because it's like, hey, I'm just encouraging you to like think broadly about the future. No, that is an embedded social cue that you have to go to work, okay, and that you don't get to sit around. And then also depending on the people that raised you, okay, if you were like sitting around the house, and it didn't look like you were productive, like cleaning something, working on something, doing some homework, people in your family will roll up on you like, you don't have anything to do?
Right. And don't dare say you're bored.
Right? That's unheard of. And so a lot of us have really been dialed into the idea that in order for you to have value, in order for you to have worth, in order for you not to be lazy, in order for you not to be labeled, you have to be doing something. And there has not been a lot of emphasis on being. And so a lot of us were raised with the emphasis on what we were doing. Did you do your homework? Did you pick up your sister? Did you defrost that meat like I told you? Did you go clean your room? Did you clean out the garage? Did you do? And very rarely asked, so how do you feel? Tell me about your day. What's going on with you? We weren't asked those types of questions. And so because the value and the emphasis was placed on the doing, what that also leads to is you becoming disconnected from your own self and disconnected from your own emotions because it's not safe to have emotions. It's not safe to have feelings. People don't ask me those types of questions. And so that gets shoved away somewhere. And now I have to do. I
Mhm.
have to do. And then even when people are feeling challenging emotions, people struggle to even sit with them. People have a struggle being still because it's like, I don't want to be overwhelmed by these emotions. So let me go do some other numbing activity. Let me start binging on Netflix. Let me start like putting my mind someplace else because if I sit too long with myself, I'm afraid of what's going to come up. And so let me try to avoid it in some way, which is also not healthy.
Mhm. And it's, and like some people, when they sit with themselves, it just becomes so uncomfortable,
Hmm.
to just deal with yourself. I know when the pandemic happened, and I know I'm kind of an isolator. I really love my alone time, but I can see that there were a lot of people who were anxious to be around other people, and they just couldn't be with themselves. And
And
yeah.
really struggling. And some people relied on that daily distraction of school or that daily distraction of work. A lot of relationships fell apart during the pandemic because it's like, well, when we've got to get the kids to these activities, and you've got a job, and I've got a job, and then I got a baby shower on the weekends. It's very easy not to have to like really engage with one another and interact with one another. But then when all of those distractions were taken off the board, and you really had to sit with each other, it was like,
Mhm.
who is this person? And do I still want to be married to you? It's like dealing with some real issues.
Exactly.
That
'Cause
is stuck
it's
under
right
the
in your
rug of
face.
productivity.
You had no choice but to look at each other or look at yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely, positively.
So, what are a few coping strategies you found helpful for managing anxiety, especially in today's world where so many people are feeling overwhelmed?
So I went back to my first love, which for me was books. So I'm a Gen Xer, and let me tell you, the highlight of life was the Scholastic Book Fair.
Yes.
Okay.
Same.
Got my stickers, Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary, Shel Silverstein, Ramona, like all of those books, and it's a beautiful and stalwart form of like escapism, right? And a lot of people have turned to that. So book talk, booktube, bookstagrammers, people are like, hey, let's build community around these books and like let's have a shared experience around these books. And so I think that reading is an excellent way to do that. Also, I am a big believer in having pursuits of joy. And so there is joy in, I mean, there is real value in doing things that have no monetary or, productive value other than the fact that it makes you happy, right? And I really press parents on this point because if you ask a lot of parents, so tell me about like what your kids are doing. Oh, well, Timmy's in the little league and we got ballet and then we got tennis lessons on the weekend and then there's ice skating and there's gymnastics and they'll have all these activities for their kids and it's like, okay, so tell me about you. Crickets. It's like, where are your activities? Where are your joy pursuits? When is the last time you painted a picture? When is the last time that you pulled out your guitar? When is the last time that you wrote a song or a poem or went to a jazz, session? And like, when is the last time you did things that just
Yeah.
made you happy? When's the last time you went dancing? And people struggle like, oh, well, I became an adult and I'm supposed to give those things up. No.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There are better uses of your time than doom scrolling on Instagram. There are better uses of your time. When is the last time you had a meaningful conversation with somebody? We are so dialed into this notion of doing that. A lot of people hate even answering their phone because they know instead of people saying, hey, I'm just calling to check on you, it's going to be, hey, what are you doing Saturday? Or, hey, can you do something for me real quick? Or, hey, I need you to do A, B, C, and D. And it's like, can we just talk? Can we actually connect? Can we just be? Rather than having to always do these productive and transactional favors for people. So I would say build community around common interests. So whether that's books, dancing, music, what have you. I would also say joyous pursuits of things that have no other purpose other than the fact that they just literally make you happy.
Yeah. No, those are great ideas and great points to put through. I need to incorporate that into my own life too. Um,
Hello.
with so much information constantly coming at us, how can we protect our mental space and avoid letting the news cycle contribute to feelings of anxiety or depression?
So I love this question. I recently addressed it with my Substack audience, and my best advice is curate your voices. All right, curate your voices. So people who are dialed into the news cycle, like for example, if like you were watching MSNBC and like that news cycle, once upon a time you kind of had your people all lined up. It was like, oh, it's Nicole Wallace, and then it's Ari, and then it's like Joy Reid, and then it's Rachel or whoever case may be. And the thing is that when I used to watch those shows, I found that basically it was a different iteration of the exact same show. They would bring in the same experts and the same pundits, and I have since learned to be careful of people who spin the news
Mhm.
rather than report the facts.
Mhm.
And so I would say rather than dialing into the spin, be intentional about finding voices that just report the facts. Okay. And even though there's no bias proof media, no matter what, there are some that do a better job of it than others. So, for example, that might be C-SPAN, a lot of voices on Substack. that are willing to not just report the news, but also substantiate their claims with data. And that is a much healthier alternative than the notifications that keep pinging on your phone. That's a much healthier alternative to being in this echo chamber of whether you watch Fox News or whether you watch MSNBC or Newsmax or what have you, of these kind of like-minded. It's like, yeah, come out of that, and curate a collection of non-biased, fact-based, truth-telling voices where you can get your information and they're not trying to get ratings,
Mm-hmm.
um, and reactions and engagement and clicks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's so many of those points are so actually on point because it's like we are so inundated with all of these different opinions and biases, and just to be able to get, Walter Cronkite type news, like just
Mhm.
the facts.
Just the
Just the
facts.
facts. And I will, pull up C-SPAN, here and there, because it's like, okay, I'm just watching what's happening, what's going on, without having an interpretation of
There we
what's,
go.
you know.
Exactly.
So many people feel the need to appear fine or strong, especially on social media. How can we shift the narrative and embrace vulnerability to help break down the stigma around mental health struggles?
So I'm gonna come back to social media is a double-edged sword. So in some places you can really find um, connection and camaraderie and people that see you. So for example, I'll use a lighthearted example. So yesterday, I was on Threads and I said, the Black delegation has officially changed Cory Booker's middle name to Jaquavius. Cory Jaquavius got time today, right? And and a lot of people was like, I second that motion. Okay, Jaquavius, that sort of thing. And his real name is Cory Anthony Booker. But it's one of those things. What I was saying is that I see you, Black man. I see you in the face of what has been some very challenging and dark days. I see you, man, and it means something. And so, and a lot of people hopped in and was like, I see you too, brother. Like your people, we see you, we appreciate what you're doing. And so in those ways, it can be very affirming to say that, I'm not the only person who sees this, and I'm not the only person who's having like an emotional response to this thing that's happening. Um, and even during the election, before we knew what the results were, right? There was a lot of kind of just like hope, because you would see these rallies and these like really hopeful rallies, right? And you would see all of these people kind of like coalescing around hope. And so in those regards, social media can be awesome for connection. At the same time, some people that have expressed their feelings. So for example, on Valentine's Day, Kamala Harris was like, Doug, I love you. There's nobody else in this world I'd rather go through this life with, or what have you. And some disgruntled Caucasian persons were like, really? This is really tone deaf. You think you should be talking about your love right now, and that sort of thing. And that's an honest moment. That's how they were feeling. They have the right to express themselves, or what have you. At the same time, this person got ate up and dragged for filth. I mean, dragged from pillar to post in the comments, because it's like, Miss Girl,
Mm-hmm.
she's a private citizen. How dare you? You're not entitled to her, like all the things, right? So social media can also be that too. Okay. And so what I would say is that quality of community rather than quantity of community. So you don't need a whole chorus of amen. It's nice it is okay to take some of this offline into the group chat. Okay. What Michelle Obama calls your kitchen table friends, like, because I'm sure there's a lot of things over the years that Miss Michelle would have loved to have said
Right.
aloud. And she took it straight to her kitchen table, like,
Right.
no.
Exactly.
So I would say, find your kitchen table friends. Okay, find your group chats. My small group of friends, we do something called the Wednesday Waffle. And so every Wednesday we hop in for like a minute or two with a voice note or a video and say, here's what's going on with me, here's what I'm struggling with, here's how I'm feeling, here's the good things that are happening, and just kind of doing those check-ins with one another. Um, and doing that. Some people have like smaller groups like Facebook groups and personal interest groups. At the same time, I am a unionized worker, and we have been trained to always be careful what you put in writing, because what you put in writing can be screenshot and distributed, and it's out. And before you know it, one moment of um, when you're just not at your best self can be taken, screenshotted, the whole tweet and delete, but somebody has it. Somebody's already captured it. And so I think that some healthier ways maybe to express, even if you don't have kitchen table friends, is that journaling is a beautiful thing, and it doesn't have to be a written journal. It can be, you have a notes app on all of your phones and your devices, and you can just get that out, and what have you. I think that there are better ways to express that vulnerability, because sometimes the rawness is not the best thing to put out for public consumption.
Consumption completely. Exactly. And I love your Wednesday waffle thing. That you guys check in on each other. I may even start implementing that with some of my friends too, because some you go by, you're so busy with life and forget to check in with each other just to see how you're doing.
Just to see how you're doing. Not to mention the fact that sometimes people see people on social media. I'm like, but you don't know how they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I just saw her. Yeah, you saw her post something about her kid got an award at school, but that's not how she's doing, And so just having those intimate check-ins, and it doesn't have to be extensive. Like I said, 1 or 2 minutes can go a long way.
And journaling too. I love that you brought up journaling. I used to do a thing called Morning Pages from the Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's book.
Julia Cameron's work. I did the morning pages. There
Yeah,
were some days where I was just like, I have nothing to write. I have nothing to say.
yeah. But then some days it's like nothing but
Yes, I got
here
some
we
great
here
ideas
we
out of that.
go. I'm in the thick of this. So, but it's very helpful to get it out, get it on the page without having to actually share everything on social media. That doesn't have to be where you put all of your personal feelings and so forth. Because like you said, people can capture it, you're maybe doing it impulsively. But yeah, pull out a good old journal.
Small journal. And then one thing I will also say about there's a lot of, so on the one hand, it's wonderful that people are talking about mental health in ways that they have never talked about mental health before. That is awesome, right? Like, because once upon a time, it was like, take it to Jesus and leave it there, right? Or, oh, that's for white people, or that's for crazy people, like, and you're getting a shrink, So there used to be like a lot of stigma around that. So on one hand, it is really wonderful that all of these conversations about mental health are happening in public spaces. And there's also a lot of misinformation and disinformation and mislabels. And sometimes people are using labels as identity. Well, the way my ADHD is set up, and it's like the labels are about understanding the diagnosis and understanding yourself. They're not about placards that you put out and identifying yourself through the lens of dysfunction or what have you. And so I think that sometimes we have to be careful also with the information that's out there, because not everybody is licensed or certified or in the best place to give sound counsel.
Mhm. Yep, very true. So, for those experiencing depression and isolation, what are some first steps they can take to reconnect with themselves and their support systems?
So one of the things that I encourage people to do is kind of like take this stock of like, where am I, right? So just kind of like where I am mentally, and some questions to ask yourself, because I think all good things start with inquiry, like from 1 question to 10 questions, but it's like, let's like ask. And it's kind of like taking a stock of this kind of like existential place of, is what I'm doing with my life right now reflective of my hopes, dreams, and aspirations? So just start there. Is the way that I'm showing up in my life right now reflective of where I want to be, what I want to do, and how I want to feel? And the answer to that question can open up a whole lot, because a lot of people are living lives and doing things that are expected of them, because that's what the family expects, because that's what your friends expect, because that's what, your grandpa's dying wish was. But it's not really what you want to do. It's not really who you are. It's not really where you want to be. Um, and if the answer is no, then it's like, what is keeping me from showing up this way? And those two questions, am I where I want to be? And if I'm not, what is keeping me from going there? Opens up many portals of exploration in terms of your relationship with yourself, in terms of your relationship with others, in terms of do you have boundaries in place to protect your hopes, dreams, goals, and feelings? Or have you sacrificed your boundaries in deference to other people to try to make them happy? Are you trying to manage other people's emotions? Well, I didn't want you to feel bad. Well, I didn't want you to feel sad. Which, don't get me wrong, that's not a poor desire. We don't want people that we care about to feel sad, and we don't want people that we care about to be disappointed. At the same time, that's not our sadness to manage. That's
Mhm.
not our disappointment to manage. We have to manage our own things, not their things. And so starting with those two questions are really good ways to unpack where you are with your mental health. And if you find barriers there, or you find incongruities there, like there's a disconnect from where I want to be versus what I'm actually doing, and I'm having trouble bridging the gap, then now I find resources to help me narrow that gap so that I can be more aligned with where I want to be and what I want to do and how I'm showing up.
Gotcha, gotcha. So finally, what message of hope or resilience would you share with our audience, especially in these challenging times, to encourage them to keep pushing forward?
You have more agency than you realize. So you can't control what happens in the White House. So I literally a couple of weeks ago had a video that went viral. Um, and the video was about, so I was raised in a Black church, and I'm not overly religious. And girl, talking about my experience in the church is a whole other documentary. At the same time, I reflected on this song that we used to sing called "I Don't Know What You Come to Do." And I don't know what you come to do is like, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I came to clap my hands. I came to stomp my feet. I came to leap for joy. Like, I don't know what's going on in the White House, but I can control what happens in my house. I don't know what's going on with the next door neighbor or how they voted, but I know how I voted. I know that I am not available for suffering. I'm not offering my suffering up for somebody else to feast upon. I'm not available for misery. I'm not available for apathy. I'm not available for poverty. I'm not available for despair. I get to choose. I get to choose how I show up in this moment. And so when I see where them fans at, I'm like, I know that's right. Because we
Right.
choose. We get to choose how, the Titanic is going on. Clack, 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 clack. I get to choose how I show up in this moment. The ship might be going down, but I get to choose how I'm going to hit that water. And so what I say to people is that you get to choose your response in this moment. You do not have to be available for despair. You do not have to be available for doubt. And if Cory Booker's efforts, in the filibuster have shown us anything, is that you can take a stand that makes a difference, and people say, well, what policy did it change, but when I tell you, hope is addictive. Hope is addictive, and it was in short supply. And so he has inspired people who had given way to despair. He has inspired people who were starting to like just figure out how they could just hunker down and wait things out, and was like, no, wait a minute. I am going to that town hall meeting. Wait a minute. I am going to vote in that local election. Wait a minute. I am going to see who's running for the advisory boards on my. I have a voice, and I get to use it. You get to choose how you show up in this moment. And as long as we have, or as long as we have it, freedom of speech. And don't get me wrong, those things are compromised. The companies like Meta are censoring are limiting, the proliferation of what gets shown, and they have the algorithms. At the same time, you can stand on the street corner. Okay. You can stand on the street corner. You can build communities, because the truth is, before we got to social media, okay, the civil rights movement, they didn't have any of that. Okay, they didn't have any of that. They had word of mouth, they had snail mail. And so if it's analog that we must return to, then let's return to analog. But where there's a will of the people, there is a way. Cory Booker said repeatedly that it's not the people who are empowered. The power is with the people. And if I can leave any encouragement with that, you are the people, and you have the power. You are the change, okay, that you're waiting for. And so just because you can't do everything doesn't mean that you can't do anything. And if the only thing that you can do is show up with a fan in your hand and say, my joy is my resistance, then that's enough.
That's enough. Amen to that. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful and so helpful, I feel, to so many people and just even myself. And how can we support you? Where can we find you? Where can we listen to your podcast?
So you can listen to my podcast on YouTube, which is called The Hole in Your Heart, Hole with a W. The Hole in Your Heart podcast, which uses a trauma-informed approach to healing your relationship with yourself and with others. And you can also subscribe to, so if you want to see my written work and how to navigate, currently doing writings about how to navigate this political space and everything that we just talked about, and how we can equip ourselves with the tools of resilience, and resistance and joy in this moment, then you can go to drshanté.substack.com, and I would be happy to have your support in that space.
Great. And I'll put those links at the bottom of this video so you have
Thank
easy access
you.
to it. So again, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate your time,
Yeah, and I hope we can do it again too.
for sure.